Chapter 8 Destiny's Dream. I thought of nothing. I knew my body was physically sleeping. I could hear and feel my heart beating as of one who was in slumber. But my inner consciousness was awake. I began to dream. The image before me began to move swiftly through the emptiness. I focused my vision inward, and the space seemed to take form. It was a library. I turned around to look about, and my image seemed to turn also. I made a mental command of movement, and in an instant my image responded to it. I walked around, my footsteps echoing on the marble floors. I looked at the many files and manuscripts, but nothing seemed to hold my interest. I kept walking along the seemingly endless shelves. I caught the letter P on one shelf, designated by a date, an ancient date. I followed the shelf, walking rapidly as the click of my heels got faster and faster until I was running at full speed down the long aisle. Suddenly I stopped, turned to a shelf, and saw the letter P. I ran my fingers along the books until I came to one that read, Paul the Sensitive. I reached for it, pulled it from the shelf, and opened it. I began to read, and suddenly I realized I was sitting in a rocking chair overlooking an ocean from a sand dune. The horizon was behind me, and dunes were in all directions. I gasped at the vastness of this place that was somehow familiar to me. Then the pulsating letters from the book caught my eye again. I turned my attention to the words. I flipped through the pages, passing names and descriptions of people I had previously been. The innumerable details of these lifetimes spanned thousands and thousands of years. As I read through the pages, I came to the part where I was dreaming this dream. I passed it and read on. I kept going until I saw the occurrence again, and all of humanity was seeing it too. I read the records of what had taken place and what would take place. I saw the effect of the occurrence on the world. It had succeeded. Humanity was in great need of this occurrence. All of humanity now understood. I kept reading on, going forward, and then the pages went blank. I was back in the present. I placed the book back on the shelf and fell into a deep and peaceful sleep. The most important thing I realized was that the level of my extrasensory perception was accelerating by leaps and bounds. It's like inspiration, where you experience that moment many times, and one day, what used to be your peak level of inspiration becomes your common, everyday self instead. Then the next level of awareness becomes your inspiration, until you've experienced it enough for it to become your normal. Do you understand? I reached desperately for Dr. Jason's answer. Yes, Paul, most definitely, he answered. Now I feel that my task has to be done when I've attained the highest possible vibration in the projection. Then I will be able to transmit the vital information concerning the occurrence more effectively to the world. I know I'm not going to be completely in control of psychic abilities for a while. That can come after I've translated and relayed the occurrence. But for now, all I need is to be helped out of my body and to that level where I'll be projecting. Once I'm out there, I know I can do the rest as I read it in the Akashic records in my dream. The things I used to believe in or thought of as theories have proven to be fact. I mean, I've experienced them. I know. I've seen auras, astral projected, had precognitive visions, and actually consulted the Akashic records. I don't need any more proof. I can do what needs to be done. I paced the floor. The office doors were open, and the impulse overcame me without warning, and I sprang out the door and screamed as loud and as long as I could at the top of my lungs. Ah! I screamed. Ah! I yelled out with the last vestige of energy I had as I fell breathless onto the grass. I coughed and choked myself into a gasping laughter. I heard Dr. Jason's voice chuckling from the room, too. Rahedra, I noticed, was in a silent convulsion, covering her face with her hands, shaking from the laughter. Oh, that felt good, I yelled, standing up from the grass. My arms hanging, my head drooped, I sheepishly walked back into the office and plopped down on the couch. I know I'm ready, Dr. Jason. And according to my vision, or precognitive dream, the occurrence is here, now. All I must do is choose a time within 3 days and project myself there. It is that simple. All I have to do is get out of my body. I know where it will be, and I'll think myself there and be there. The rest is up to you and the technology. When it's over, the rest will be up to those who see it. I am not meant to lead in the understanding or acceptance of it, just to show it and relay it. That is my task. We looked at each other for a long moment. That moment spoke volumes of our understanding of all the happenings and the importance of our accepting the course set by destiny in going with the plan that was now unfolding before our very eyes. The energy around freedom began to grow with intensity that afternoon. Dr. Jason was in deep discussion with the financiers who had funded freedom. The financiers brought with them military representatives, government officials, and persons affiliated with the United Nations. There were no news reporters at this first conference, which ended with dozens of people touring the research building. Dr. Jason explained the incredible things that the technology and the people at Freedom could do. The status and importance of the Freedom financiers was stellar. One founder, the president of an oil corporation, had first become interested in these studies at Freedom and financing Freedom after he had experienced several psychic visions which helped him change the course of his life drastically. He was a true believer in the powers of the unknown and unseen. 2 other Freedom financiers, an elderly couple, had donated millions of their airline fortunes to this research. Their kidnapped grandchildren had been found and brought to safety by the abilities of a clairvoyant, who had psychically seen where they were being held captive. Another one of the financiers had been a friend of Dr. Jason's for over 30 years. He had worked with Dr. Jason in the past, and later went on to become one of the world's foremost inventors, stimulating millions of dollars in capital from his genius with electrical innovations. His friend had always believed in these paranormal studies that Dr. Jason had been involved in. During a break, many officials were in the dining room with Dr. Jason and the financiers. They would all be letting their superiors know the time for tomorrow's transmission and recording of the occurrence. A pact of secrecy had been enacted by the President of the United Nations Security Council. Little had I known the influence and power that these financiers held, that freedom held. 50 hand-picked people would actually be present at Freedom during the occurrence itself. Communication satellites would broadcast to various governments throughout the world. There would be no simultaneous public broadcasting of the occurrence. The public viewing would take place later, after the occurrence was seen, evaluated, and understood by leaders throughout the world. There were also viewing systems set up at the United Nations, with representatives keeping a communication line open from Freedom to their own respective countries. The secrecy and security at all places was top priority. 20 thoroughly vetted and trusted newscasters, well known to people all over the world, would be present as witnesses to later explain to the world what had happened. Rahedra and I stayed near the cottages and swimming pool most of that day. She kept me shielded from the high alert state that had suddenly flooded Freedom. My task was to convey the occurrence, not to arrange it or convince others to witness it. That was the responsibility of those who were financiers, government officials, and long-time members of Freedom. It was all coming together. The puzzle was unfolding and ready to reveal itself to the world. I drifted through the images and memories of the previous days. I continued to flash back to images of myself as I had been in previous lives, the images of the occurrences, and all that had been revealed to me by the Akashic records. The more I examined the vision in my dreams, the more confident and accepting I grew toward my task. For hours I traveled, reading visions I had seen, studying them, learning them, memorizing the way it would turn out, and planning the way I would participate in the final outcome. Many were gathered at dusk inside the research building again. This time, tests of the imaging and closed-circuit monitors were taking place. Recordings of my past lives while in the sensory enhancement tank were viewed repeatedly up to the point of the occurrence. Receivers were set up all over one end of the room, where translators would be talking to their government officials from the United Nations and their respective countries. The recordings of my previous projections were played and left all those watching in awe. On display were sparkles of light, the undulation of my visions in what were the times when I was testing the inward and outward focusing of my sight. The reflections of the auras in the mirror were incredible. The blinding flash of light at the end made many jump in their seats. After the spectacular presentation of my projections into other dimensions, the men and women present from all places in the world were led down to the lower floor. There they continued throughout the night in discussions and arrangements for what they were now convinced would be a virtual voyage into the eye of destiny. The most important thing that was expressed to me by Dr. Jason was that no one should know the actual physical location of where I would be going. I should not reveal it to anyone. Keep my back door closed, I laughed to myself. The main reason for having all foreign powers see the occurrence simultaneously was to keep peace in the world and bring unity. The reason why I would be projecting made sense to me now. It was so that the occurrence could be expressed and documented without influence by all major governments throughout the world at once. The last occurrence where all the governments and officials were present was during the American Revolution. The verdict had been to never reveal the incident until humanity would be capable of living by its maxims and ideals. The only evidence left had died with those who attended the occurrence. The occurrence in Egypt had helped to change the world thousands of years before. The passing of time, the upheavals of land, and catastrophic happenings on the planet had caused all records and documentation of its reality to be lost with the secrets of the ages. However, some hints of the events from the past were evident. The philosophies, teachings, and practices passed down through the centuries could still be found in many cultures throughout the world. But it would take another occurrence to impact the people of the world in a lasting and powerful way. This occurrence would now be recorded and documented to show to the entire world. It would be verified as authentic and factual by their very own governments, which were now under a unanimous covenant to do so. A treaty to share the occurrence equally and openly with all was now just hours away. Rahedra, Dr. Jason, and I were the only ones still inside the 4th floor late in the evening. Many others were stationed out on the grounds in large travel buses that accommodated beds and telephones. There were security police forces surrounding freedom. Dozens of people were outside, still discussing and expressing their awe regarding the recorded images they had viewed earlier. Their excitement was palpable. "Well, Paul, I guess you can see now that it's something that might affect the entire world, if it comes off right." "According to the ending of the vision I saw, there is no doubt that it will," I said with confidence and wonder. "Do you know now how to get to the place where you must go?" he asked. "Yes, and I realize the simplicity of it. I don't have to go traveling across other worlds or know the ins and outs of the astral zone or even of the higher dimensions. I need merely to be helped out of my body. I then think of the place and I'll be there. After it's over, I think myself back and that's it. The technology does all the recording and visualizations. I'll leave mastering the other worlds to my future. I need to do exactly what was shown to me in my vision and all will be well. I hope. I managed to smile. So do we all, Paul. So do we all, he said, embracing me with a hug for the first time. After this, Paul, you will have a great future ahead of you. I also read that in my Akashic travels. Yeah, I saw most of it myself. I guess the interesting part is that I saw the beginnings and the endings to everything. There were still enough details left up to me to make my life challenging and meaningful. And I do have Rehedra. I smiled to her. Well, Paul, if you feel you need to try projecting a couple more times before tomorrow, I know I'll be up all night anyhow. We can make a few test tries for your sake, if you like. Are you sure you can induce me out of my body tomorrow? I asked. Yes, positive. Your higher self is in direct contact with the source that had destined all this. Your conscious is not resisting anything, and once you are in the tank for a short while, your conscious mind will be so relaxed and receptive, you will be able to come out. If you feel confident you know where you must project to, well, that's it. No need to make any other practice tries before destiny's final call. That's it. Wow. I've lived it twice before in my regressions, but this time we have all this advanced technology, the United Nations, and all these people. It's got to be right. It's got to be. The world has to see. It has to be clear enough for all to comprehend, I beamed. It will be, smiled Rehedra. It will be. Dr. Jason remained behind on the lawn amidst all the confusion. Rehedra and I walked towards the cottages. I felt a sudden tension in the back of my neck. I turned, and most, if not all, who were busy chattering were watching me in wonder as I walked away. In my own altered state of mind, I felt that I was merely the witness of all this. This was so much more than I, or any one person alone, could have arranged and organized. Still, many eyes were on me as we disappeared into the darkness of the shadows. I'm having a little trouble meshing our concept of time with that of the other dimensions. How long was I actually out the last time? I asked Rehedra. About 15 or 20 minutes, she answered. That helps a lot with balancing my psychic equilibrium, if that makes any sense. Yes, I do understand what you mean, she smiled, reminding me that she had also done this before, and could imagine the feelings and even the images of what was running through my mind. That's good, I laughed. Good luck, my lover of this life, past lives, and future lives, when our time to return has arrived, she said. Me too, I answered, kissing her, hugging her tightly. Tomorrow, this awakening that is coming to humanity will be the first step toward the real answers to all the endless questions we have about ourselves as humans. It's going to be so great, so incredible and amazing. I love you, she smiled. I love you. We melded and embraced as one, as we traveled to a place, a dimension of feeling and of pleasure and oneness with our bodies, our hearts, and our souls. We joined in the eyes of our Maker, whom we believed had given us this time to find our oneness and to feel the joy of eternity and its peace, its love, as the world around us was chasing the excitement of a coming tomorrow.